Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel, and for the second day in a row, I'm going to be doing something that I've never really done before on the channel. Today, I've put together kind of a wish list slash predictions for future Alter Egos players. Now, obviously, the very first ones came out yesterday with the Honey Badger Tyrann Mathieu and the Big Ben Roethlisberger. Those are two pretty cool cards. But what I ended up doing is scouring the internet for tons of NFL nicknames. Some of them I already knew, some of them I, wrote down before I looked them up. But there are definitely some that I hadn't even heard of before. So I wrote down a ton of these in a massive list, and then I ended up putting these into 5 tiers, and we're going to get to those in a minute. But before we look at those, I also made 2 custom cards. Now, you already saw one of them on the thumbnail, but I do want to show you those because I think they're pretty cool. The first one that you did see on the thumbnail is the player, I think, with one of the best nicknames, and also probably, in my opinion, the most likely to be added in the game. Now, obviously, it might not be, but I think it's probably the most likely, and it is Beast Mode Marshawn Lynch, as you can see right there. It's not like an amazing looking card. It's not the same card art as in the game. I didn't have a ton of time to put these together, but I think they're pretty solid. That's obviously a picture from his run against the Saints, where he broke 8 tackles. Insane play. That was the Beast Quake. And I think it's a really cool card right here. Obviously, it has to be Smash Mouth. But that's card number 1, and then card number 2, which you don't know yet, but you might be able to guess if you know that I'm a Packers fan, even though I'm wearing a Steelers shirt. The second card is B.J. Raji the Freezer. Now, obviously, we all know William the Refrigerator Perry. He played for the Bears a long time ago, but more recently, the Packers had B.J. Raji, and they gave him the nickname the Freezer. He wasn't as big, as hyped, and didn't have as big of a role on offense as William Perry did, but I'm pretty sure he was in as a fullback at some point, and he was part of that Super Bowl winning team back in the 2010 season. So I made those 2 cards. Let me know down in the comments what you think of these. I think they're pretty decent. They're not amazing, but they're decent. So let me know what you think of those down in the comments. And now we are going to get into this massive tier list that I made. I want to say there's at least 50 names in total. I'm not sure if all of them are on the tier list, but that's also just a guess, so I might be way off. Before we look at that, I want to look at some honorable mentions, players whose nicknames I knew or I found and I wrote down, but I didn't put on kind of the tiers. So I'll read those out. The first 2 are already in the game, which is interesting. Mean Joe Green and Ed Too Tall Jones. Those are already in the game. They've always been there. And they've also, those are kind of their names. Another one that was like that, actually Deacon Jones. His name isn't actually Deacon, it's David. And he said the reason he went by Deacon is, and I quote, "Nobody would ever be afraid of David Jones," which he's not wrong. And then one more that's already in the game is Night Train Lane. Obviously, that's just what he went by, but his real name is Dick Lane. And then the rest of them here are the Galloping Ghosts, which was Red Grange, the Snake for Kenny Stabler, and then the Minister of Defense for Reggie White. That one could be added in the game because he does have a card, but it didn't make my list. And then we have a bunch more here. We have Tank for DeMarcus Lawrence, Roads Closed for Xavier Rhodes, the Squirrel for Julian Edelman, Red Rifle for Andy Dalton, Ball So Hard / T Sizzle is one that I found for Terrell Suggs, Captain Kirk for Kirk Cousins, Duck for Devlin Hodges, Fitz for Larry Fitzgerald. I honestly just couldn't fit it onto my list, but that's one that was pretty close to being on there. And then you got Flash 80 and World, were both nicknames for Jerry Rice. I hadn't even ever heard those before. And then the last one that didn't make the tiers was the Playmaker for Michael Irvin. But that's it with all of the honorable mentions. I'll put that aside, and now we get to look at this massive tier list right here. And here it is. So I basically just put these guys into 5 tiers, ranking them on kind of 2 things. First of all, how good is their nickname? The better your nickname, the higher you are in these tiers. And then the second thing is the likelihood of being added into the game. So there's some on here that I think are really good nicknames, but they're not likely to be added in the game for whatever reason. And within each tier, they're not in any specific order. But let's get started. Right at the top, you see Michael Thomas and Marshawn Lynch, Can't Guard Mike, and Beast Mode. Those are obviously two really popular names, nicknames, and I obviously made the Beast Mode card, but I think Can't Guard Mike is definitely one that's super popular, super well known, and I think it's definitely one that we could see in the game. Moving on to the second tier, these are names that aren't quite as like these are going to be in the game as the first tier. I feel like Can't Guard Mike and Beast Mode, those kind of have to be in the game. Second tier, not so much, but pretty likely to be in the game. We got Sweetness for Walter Payton, Prime Time for Deion Sanders, Cheetah for Tyreek Hill, The Bus for Jerome Bettis, Bam Bam Cam for Cam Chancellor, and then Marquise Hollywood Brown. He doesn't even really go by Marquise. Everyone calls him Hollywood, so I think that's definitely a card that we could get. On to tier 3, you see on the right side there, you have the Freezer for BJ Raji. I don't think it's likely that that'll be in the game, but it's one that I love, so I had to put it up there. And that one, honestly, it might be a little out of place, but it's fine. Let's read through all of those. You got the Human Joystick for Dante Hall, Dangerous for Russell Wilson, Broadway Joe for Joe Namath. That's another one. Really good nickname, but I don't think it's going to end up in the game. Then you got King Henry for Derrick Henry, Superman for Cam Newton, the Nigerian Nightmare for Christian Okoye, and I haven't seen an Okoye card in forever. We got Weapon X for Brian Dawkins, the Sheriff for Peyton Manning. An interesting one, the Swiss Army Knife for Taysom Hill. That could be a very interesting card. And then you got Megatron for Calvin, obviously one of the best nicknames in the history of the NFL, but he just got a 100 overall with the last field pass, so I don't think that's super likely. And then you got the Refrigerator, William Perry, right there. Moving on to tier number 4. The first one I'm going to look at is all the way in the bottom right, the Bad Man. I think that's a good one, good nickname, but I don't think it is at all likely to be in the game. If it is, I'm spending all of the resources, all of my coins to get that Bad Man Aaron Rodgers card, but I don't think it's going to happen. The other ones that we have in there are Jet Jones for Julio, Nuke for DeAndre Hopkins, Gronk for Rob Gronkowski. That's another one that's good, but it's not really like a nickname that goes as well for LT and RG3. That's just their name. It's not really like an interesting nickname, even though it's like a really good nickname, but like it's not as much of a nickname as the Bad Man. Keep it moving there. We got Pac-Man Jones for Adam Jones, Shady McCoy for LaShawn McCoy, the Comeback Kid for Joe Montana, All Day or AD for Adrian Peterson. That's an interesting one that I would love to see in the game. You got Snacks for Damon Harrison, Saquads Barkley for Saquon, Tom Terrific for Tom Brady. That's kind of the top one for him. Showtime for Aaron Jones. Had to throw that in because I am a Packers fan. And then you got Fitzmagic for Ryan Fitzpatrick there. On to the final tier here. These are ones that kind of just squeezed in. Either they were pushed off of the 4th tier or they just made it from the honorable mentions. We got Matty Ice for Matt Ryan, The Ghost for Dave Casper, Juice for Jarvis Landry, Neon Dion for Deion Sanders. And I think Primetime is far and away better than Neon Dion. That's why I have this one so low, but it is, if we're ranking how good the nickname is, it's definitely higher than tier 5. You got Revis Island for Darrelle Revis, Chad Ochocinco for Chad Johnson. That's another one. I think that one's probably a bit low. Maybe 3 or 4 is where that one should be. You got Famous Jameis for Jameis Winston, Joe Cool for Joe Montana, Billy White Shoes Johnson, which is one of my all-time favorites. I've always loved that name. You got Greg the Leg for Zerloin, Flash Gordon for Josh Gordon, and then Iron Mike for Mike Ditka. Those are all of the names that I compiled. My biggest question to you is 2 things, really. Which of these would you want to see in the game? And then the second thing, did I miss any? Because I feel like there's definitely some that I missed. One that I didn't even mention, I forgot about it again. I didn't find this one when I initially went through. Somebody mentioned this one to me. Daniel Jones, Danny Dimes. I didn't think of that one. That's a solid one. I don't think it's going to be in the game, but it definitely could. If there are any that you know or you can think of that I didn't mention in this video, drop them down in the comments. I'd love to see if there's any that I didn't find or I don't know. And let me know which ones you personally would want to see in the game. I would definitely say watch out for more of these alter egos players. I don't know when more of them are going to be dropping, but it was pretty clear that there are going to be more in the game. I just don't know when, maybe on the 4th, but we will see. That is going to be it for this video. Let me know down in the comments if you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe as always, and I'll see you next time.